Now you can stay at home and become my errand boy." That was the sentence Marissa Miller laughed out loud after her husband told her he had just been sacked. No sympathy, no concern, just mockery, sharp enough to humiliate a man in his own home. What she didn't know was that the quiet man standing in front of her had already begun a plan that would turn her laughter into silence. A plan so calculated, so patient, it would end with her losing everything she thought she controlled. Viewers, have you ever watched someone underestimate the wrong person? How do you think revenge should be served when dignity is taken from you? Let me know in the comments. The rain had already soaked Evan Miller's jacket by the time he reached the narrow duplex on Hawthorne Avenue. Downtown Columbus glowed in the distance, glass towers catching the last light of evening, but Evan didn't notice any of it. His mind replayed the same sentence again and again, like a bruise you can't stop touching. "We're letting you go, effective immediately. No warning, no performance review, just a cardboard box, a forced handshake, and a security badge that no longer worked. 12 years at the manufacturing firm, 12 years of staying late, fixing other people's mistakes, missing birthdays and anniversaries because the plant needs you. All of it erased in a 15-minute meeting." Evan paused at the front door. He didn't want to go in yet. The house looked the same, trimmed hedges, porch light on, Marissa's car parked neatly in the driveway. Normal, calm, safe. He took a breath and reminded himself that marriage meant partnership, that even bad news could be shared. When he stepped inside, the smell of reheated pasta filled the air. The television murmured in the background. Marissa sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone, legs crossed, silk robe pulled tight around her waist. "You're home early," she said without looking up. Evan loosened his tie. His hands were shaking. "We need to talk." That made her glance up, one eyebrow lifting slightly. "About what?" He stood there, briefcase still in his hand, rain dripping onto the mat. I lost my job today." The words sounded smaller out loud, fragile, like glass. For half a second, Marissa stared at him. Then her lips twitched, and then she laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not disbelief, a sharp, amused sound that cut through the room. "You're serious?" she asked, still smiling. Evan nodded. "There was a downsizing, they said." She laughed again, louder this time, leaning back against the couch. "Oh my God, Evan, you're kidding." "I'm not," he said quietly. She wiped at the corner of her eye as if tears had formed from laughing too hard. "So what does that make you now?" Evan swallowed. "Marissa, I just got home. I thought maybe—" She stood up and walked toward him slowly, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. Her eyes traveled over him from his damp jacket to his scuffed shoes. "Well," she said lightly, "I guess now you can stay at home and become my errand boy." The sentence hung in the air, heavy and final. Evan felt something shift inside his chest. Not anger, not yet. Something quieter, something breaking. "I'll find something else," he said. "I already have contacts, it's not the end." Marissa scoffed. "You always say that. 12 years at the same place and they toss you out like trash. Says a lot, doesn't it?" He stared at her, searching her face for a trace of the woman he married. The woman who once held his hand when he failed a certification exam. The woman who cried when they bought this house together. That woman was gone. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. She turned away, already losing interest. "For starters, you can clean up. The kitchen's a mess. And tomorrow I need you to drop my car at the shop and pick up my dry cleaning, since you've got all the time in the world now." That night, Evan lay awake beside her, listening to her steady breathing. The ceiling fan hummed softly. His phone buzzed with unread messages from coworkers, confusion, sympathy, rumors. He didn't open them. Instead, his mind drifted backward. He remembered being 24, sitting across from Marissa in a crowded diner, promising her he'd build something solid. He remembered the pride in her eyes the day he got promoted to operations manager. He remembered thinking that love was permanent if you worked hard enough. Sleep didn't come easily. The next morning, Marissa woke him before dawn. "Why are you still in bed?" she snapped, pulling the curtains open. "I need breakfast, and don't forget, I want almond milk, not regular." Evan sat up slowly. "I barely slept," she shrugged. "Welcome to the real world." That was the beginning. Days blurred together. Evan cooked. Evan cleaned. Evan ran errands in the cold and rain. Marissa corrected him constantly, pointing out dust he missed, groceries he bought wrong, shirts he folded improperly. She stopped introducing him as her husband. "This is Evan," she'd say to neighbors. "He's between jobs." Sometimes she didn't use his name at all. At night, when she wasn't home yet, Evan sat at the kitchen table and stared at the wall. He didn't cry. He didn't argue. He listened. He observed. He noticed how quickly respect vanished when money disappeared, how laughter could be sharper than insults, how silence could be armor. And somewhere deep inside him, beneath the humiliation and the forced obedience, something settled. Not despair, not rage, patience. Because Evan Miller was not finished, not even close. 2 months can feel like a lifetime when respect is stripped away one small act at a time. By the second week after Evan lost his job, Marissa rewrote the rules of the house without ever sitting him down to explain them. She didn't need to. Her tone did the work. Her eyes did the rest. "Why is the trash still here?" she asked one morning, tapping her heel impatiently while Evan stood at the sink rinsing dishes. "I was about to take it out," he said. "Well, you're not about to anymore," she replied. "You're already late. Honestly, Evan, if you can't even handle simple things—" She let the sentence trail off, the implication clear. Evan tied the trash bag and walked out into the cold. Snow had started falling overnight, the sidewalks slick and gray. As he slipped once on the steps, he heard the door close behind him, locked, not aggressively, casually, as if he were just another delivery guy. That moment stayed with him. Marissa began assigning tasks the way a manager might delegate work to someone she didn't respect. Pick up groceries, return packages, drive across town to pay a bill she could have handled online in 5 minutes. Sometimes she called while he was already out. "Since you're not doing anything important," she'd say, "stop by my sister's place and drop this off." Her sister Claire didn't even try to hide her discomfort. "I didn't know you were home now," Claire said once, her voice careful. Evan forced a polite smile. "Yeah, for a bit." Marissa loved those moments, loved the subtle shift in how people looked at him. The lowered voices, the sideways glances, it fed something in her. At family dinners, she told jokes at his expense. "He used to complain about being tired after work," she said once, laughing as she poured herself wine. "Now he complains about vacuuming. Life has a sense of humor." Everyone chuckled awkwardly. Evan stared at his plate. At night, she scrolled through job listings on her phone and read them aloud with mock enthusiasm. "Look, Evan, entry-level warehouse associate. You might be overqualified. Oh, wait." She smirked and kept scrolling. The worst part wasn't the words. It was the certainty behind them. Marissa truly believed she had won, that she had been proven right all along, that Evan was small, replaceable, dependent. And Evan let her believe it. He woke before her every morning. He prepared breakfast exactly the way she liked it. He kept the house spotless. He responded to insults with silence. When she raised her voice, he lowered his. From the outside, it looked like defeat. Inside, it was something else entirely. Evan began to see patterns. He noticed how Marissa only mocked him when others were around, how she checked her reflection before belittling him, as if performance mattered more than truth, how she never asked how he felt, only what he could do. Late one night, while she slept, Evan sat at the dining table with his laptop open. He wasn't applying for jobs. Not yet. He was documenting dates, times, exact phrases. Now you can stay at home and become my errand boy. At least I married someone useful for errands. If you don't like it, you can leave. You don't pay for anything anymore. He saved voice notes, screenshots, messages she sent to friends, laughing about him. He didn't tell anyone what he was doing. Weeks passed. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon, while Evan was scrubbing the bathtub, his phone rang. Unknown number. He stared at it for a moment before answering. "Hello? Evan Miller?" a calm male voice asked. "Yes. This is Thomas Reed from Kessler Industrial. We worked together briefly during the Midwest expansion project." Evan straightened slowly. "Yes, I remember." "I'll be direct," Thomas said. "We're restructuring. Your name came up more than once. We heard you were let go." Evan glanced toward the living room. Marissa's laughter drifted from the television. "That's correct," Evan said carefully. "There was a mistake," Thomas continued. "Your termination file raised flags, legal ones, and now a competitor has made you an offer." Evan's grip tightened on the phone. "I haven't spoken to anyone." "They spoke to us," Thomas said. "We'd like to talk, in person." Evan felt a strange calm settle over him. "When?" he asked. "Tomorrow morning," discreetly. After the call ended, Evan went back to scrubbing the tub. His hands were steady. That night, Marissa tossed her coat onto the chair and sighed. "I'm exhausted. You wouldn't understand." Evan nodded. "Dinner's almost ready." She studied him for a moment, suspicion flickering briefly in her eyes, then dismissed it. "Good," she said. "Oh, and tomorrow I need you to come with me to a work thing next month. Just as a +1. Don't embarrass me." He met her gaze. "Of course." She smiled, satisfied. She had no idea that everything she thought she controlled was already slipping through her fingers, because Evan Miller was no longer waiting to be saved. He was waiting to choose the moment. The cafe sat 2 blocks off High Street, the kind of place executives used when they didn't want to be seen. No logos, no lines, just quiet tables, muted conversations, and the soft clink of porcelain against saucers. Evan arrived early. He wore the same coat he'd been wearing for weeks. Nothing flashy, nothing that hinted at what was coming. He chose a seat near the window, hands folded, posture relaxed. To anyone watching, he looked like a man with nowhere to be. At precisely 9 o'clock, Thomas Reed walked in, tall, gray at the temples, calm confidence in every step. He spotted Evan immediately and smiled. "Evan Miller," he said, extending a hand. "You look exactly the same." Evan stood and shook it. "You don't." Thomas laughed lightly and sat. "Fair enough." They ordered coffee. Black for Evan, cream for Thomas. "I'll get straight to it," Thomas said, leaning back. "Your termination was flagged during an internal audit. Turns out your department's downsizing list was adjusted. Names moved around. Yours shouldn't have been there." Evan said nothing. "We also received word that Titanworks was preparing an offer for you," Thomas continued. "Senior operations, significant authority. When we found out, our board panicked." Evan lifted his eyes. And they want you back," Thomas said. "Immediately." Silence stretched between them. "Not just back," Thomas added. "Promoted. Senior executive role. Double your previous salary. Full oversight on restructuring." Evan let the words settle. He felt no rush of triumph, no urge to smile, just clarity. "There's more," Thomas said. "You'll report directly to the board. No middle management, no politics, and He paused. Full discretion. Evan's jaw tightened slightly. Including personnel decisions? Thomas met his gaze. Including personnel decisions. Evan nodded once. I'll need assurances in writing. They're prepared, Thomas said, sliding a folder across the table. And Evan, this stays quiet, for now. Evan closed the folder without opening it. It will. When he left the cafe, the city looked different, not brighter, sharper. Every step felt deliberate. That afternoon, Evan opened a new bank account, his name only. No shared access, no alerts sent home. The deposit cleared within hours. That evening, Marissa tossed her bag onto the counter. Why is the laundry still in the dryer? I'll get it, Evan said. She watched him for a moment, head tilted. You're being unusually agreeable. He met her eyes calmly. I'm listening better. She smiled, satisfied. Good. You should. Days passed, then weeks. Every morning, Evan left the house at the same time Marissa did. She assumed he was job hunting. He never corrected her. He drove downtown, parked in a public garage, and walked into a building with a new badge and a quiet office overlooking the river. Inside, he rebuilt what others had broken. He reviewed files, he corrected processes, he identified the people who had pushed his name onto that list. He took notes. At home, he scrubbed floors and cooked meals. At work, he signed decisions that shifted entire departments. Marissa noticed changes, but misread them. You're standing straighter, she said one night, trying to look confident again. Something like that, Evan replied. She laughed. Careful. Confidence without money is just attitude. Evan didn't respond. One evening, she came home angry. My manager's an idiot, she snapped. She's scheduled a gala next month, company anniversary, like anyone cares. Evan looked up from chopping vegetables. A gala? Yeah, Marissa said. Downtown, big venue, executives everywhere. I hate these things, but attendance is mandatory. She rolled her eyes. You'll come. Obviously, I need you there. Evan paused. Why? So people don't think I'm alone, she said sharply. You can put on a suit for one night. He nodded. Of course. That night, after she fell asleep, Evan opened his laptop again. He emailed his lawyer. Proceed. The response came quickly. Understood. Evan began transferring assets. Quietly, legally, methodically. The house deed, the savings, the accounts Marissa assumed were joint. Each move documented, each step protected. He scheduled consultations. He compiled evidence. He built a case without raising his voice once. Marissa grew harsher. She criticized the way he spoke, the way he walked, the way he breathed. You've gotten slower, she said one morning. All that staying home is making you dull. Evan smiled faintly. Maybe. Inside, he was counting days. The night before the gala, Marissa laid out a dress on the bed. Deep blue, expensive, confident. Try not to embarrass me, she said. You'll stick close. Smile when I tell you to. Evan adjusted his cufflinks. I understand. She looked at him, something like doubt flickering in her eyes, then turned away. At the venue, lights reflected off glass and polished floors. Voices hummed. Music played softly. Marissa walked in ahead of Evan, chin high. Wait here, she said. I need to greet someone. Evan waited. Then the lights dimmed. A voice came over the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, the host said, thank you for joining us tonight. We're honored to celebrate a year of transformation and leadership. Evan straightened. And now, the voice continued, please welcome the man leading our next chapter, our newly appointed Senior Executive Director, Evan Miller. Applause erupted. Marissa froze. Evan stepped forward, and everything she thought she knew began to collapse. For one suspended second, Marissa thought she had misheard. The applause was too loud, Two coordinated, heads turned, faces lit with admiration. People rose from their seats, clapping with genuine enthusiasm, the kind reserved for power, for authority, for someone who mattered. Evan Miller. Her Evan. No, the unemployed one. Her fingers tightened around her clutch as she slowly turned toward the stage. There he was, walking forward with calm, measured steps, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit she had never seen before. His shoulders were straight, his expression unreadable, not nervous, not eager, in control. The blood drained from her face. Someone beside her leaned over and whispered, "That's your husband, right? I didn't realize he was—" Marissa didn't answer. She couldn't. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. On stage, Evan accepted the microphone with a small nod of thanks. The applause softened, then faded into attentive silence. "Good evening," he said, his voice carried easily across the room. Steady, clear, the voice of a man who had been listened to before and expected to be listened to again. "Tonight is about growth," Evan continued, "about resilience, about the decisions we make when things fall apart." Marissa's heart pounded so loudly she barely heard the rest. Evan scanned the room slowly, executives, board members, department heads. He saw people who had avoided his eyes months earlier, people who had signed papers and called it strategy. Then, for just a fraction of a second, his gaze found Marissa. He didn't smile, he didn't glare. He simply acknowledged her presence the way one acknowledges a closed chapter. She felt smaller than she ever had. "There's a misconception," Evan said, "that success is loud, that strength needs to announce itself. In my experience, real strength is quiet. It listens. It waits." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience. "Some of you know my story," he continued. "Some of you only know the title I hold now, but I want to talk about dignity, about how people treat you when they believe you have nothing to offer." Marissa's hands trembled. She remembered her laughter, the errands, the locked door, the words she'd used so casually, so cruelly. "Now you can stay at home and become my errand boy," Evan spoke on. "I learned a great deal during a period when I was underestimated," he said. "I learned who values loyalty, who sees partnership as conditional, and who mistakes silence for weakness." The room was completely still now. Marissa felt eyes turning toward her, not because anyone knew yet, but because something in Evan's tone hinted at a story with teeth. "And I learned something else," he finished. "Patience isn't passive, it's preparation." The applause that followed was thunderous. Evan stepped down from the stage and was immediately surrounded. Handshakes, congratulations, offers of drinks and conversations. People leaned in, eager to be seen beside him. Marissa stood rooted to the spot. A woman she recognized from HR approached her cautiously. "Marissa, right? Your husband is impressive." Marissa forced a smile. "Yes, he is." The woman hesitated. "You must be proud." Marissa nodded, her throat tight. "Of course." But pride wasn't what she felt. It was fear. On the drive home, the silence was suffocating. Evan drove. Marissa stared out the window, the city lights blurring together. "You could have told me," she said finally. Evan kept his eyes on the road. "You never asked." "That's not fair," she snapped. "I'm your wife." He exhaled slowly. "Were you?" She turned toward him sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," Evan said calmly, "that marriage is more than proximity, more than sharing a house. It's how you speak to someone when they fall." Her jaw clenched. "So this is punishment? You embarrassed me." "I didn't." "Say your name," Evan replied. "I didn't look at you. I didn't lie." They pulled into the driveway. Inside the house, Marissa's confidence returned in flashes. "So what now?" she demanded. "You think you're better than me because you got lucky?" Evan removed his jacket carefully, draping it over the chair. "I think," he said, "that luck has nothing to do with character." She laughed, brittle. "Don't act like a saint. You still need me." He looked at her then. Really looked. "No," he said, "I don't." The next morning, Marissa woke to an empty house. On the kitchen table lay a manila envelope. Her name was written on it in Evan's precise handwriting. Inside were documents, official, legal, divorce papers. Her hands shook as she flipped through them. No shared accounts, no claim to the house, no spousal support. Her phone buzzed. A message from Evan. "I've already moved my belongings. A locksmith will arrive this afternoon. Please be gone by then." She dropped the papers. "This can't be happening," she whispered, but it was. By the end of the week, Marissa's laughter had vanished. Friends stopped calling. Stories spread quietly, not dramatized, just facts. At the hearing, recordings were played, messages read aloud. Her own words echoed back to her in a sterile room. The judge listened, took notes, asked questions. When the ruling came, it was brief. No settlement, no alimony, no appeal. Marissa walked out alone. Evan stood outside the courthouse, the city moving around him, indifferent and alive. He felt no triumph, no joy in her downfall, only relief, because dignity, once reclaimed, doesn't need revenge to survive. It only needs the truth. Evan Miller's rise did not come with headlines or victory laps. It came quietly, the way real power often does. 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized, Evan moved into a high-rise apartment overlooking the Scioto River. Floor-to-ceiling windows, clean lines, space that felt like breathing room. For the first time in years, every decision inside those walls was his alone. He woke early, not because someone ordered him to, but because purpose pulled him forward. At work, the shift was undeniable. Meetings stopped when he entered the room. Conversations changed direction. People listened, not out of fear, but respect. Evan didn't raise his voice. He didn't belittle. He didn't repeat the cruelty that had once been handed to him. Instead, he rebuilt systems that rewarded competence. He promoted people who had been overlooked. He cut loose managers who ruled by intimidation and ego. One afternoon, Thomas Reed leaned back in his chair and studied Evan carefully. "You know," Thomas said, "some people would have used this position to settle scores." Evan didn't look up from the file he was reviewing. "That's not leadership." "No," Thomas agreed, "it's not." Word spread fast, not about Evan's past humiliation, that stayed buried, but about his standards, his calm authority, his refusal to tolerate disrespect in any form. Employees felt it. Productivity rose. So did morale. Evan became known as the executive who listened. Outside the office, his life expanded in ways he hadn't anticipated. He reconnected with his younger brother, Lucas, who admitted quietly over dinner, "I didn't recognize you last year. You were shrinking." Evan nodded. "I let someone define me." "And now?" "Now," Evan said, "I don't need permission to exist." He joined a gym, not to prove anything, but to feel strong again. He took weekend drives with no destination. He learned how silence could be peaceful instead of punishing. One evening, as he stood on his balcony watching the city lights flicker on, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "I didn't know who you were becoming." "I'm sorry." Evan stared at the screen for a long moment. "Marissa." He typed nothing back, not out of bitterness, out of closure, because apologies that arrive after consequences aren't keys, they're echoes. Months later, Evan was invited to speak at a leadership summit in Chicago. The topic, resilience in modern careers. He stood on stage, looking out at hundreds of faces, young professionals, seasoned executives, people hungry for stability in an uncertain world. "I want to tell you something I learned the hard way," Evan said. Your value does not disappear when a title does, and anyone who treats you as disposable when you're down was never invested in you, only in what you provided. The audience leaned in. Power isn't loud, he continued. It doesn't mock. It doesn't need to humiliate. Real strength waits, observes, and chooses its moment. The applause that followed wasn't polite. It was earned. After the event, a young man approached him, nervous. My partner just lost her job, he said. I didn't know how to help her, but I think I do now. Evan smiled. Stand beside her, that's it. Back home, Evan passed the old duplex on Hawthorne Avenue one evening. The porch light was broken, the hedges overgrown. Someone else lived there now. He didn't slow down, because the place where he had been reduced no longer held him. Years later, Evan's name appeared on lists, industry rankings, leadership profiles, boards. But those were footnotes. The real victory was quieter. It was waking up without fear. It was knowing that no laughter could ever strip him again. It was understanding that patience, paired with self-respect, is a force that doesn't announce itself until it's undeniable. And somewhere out there, Marissa lived with the memory of a man she underestimated, a man she mistook for weak, a man who listened, waited, and rose.